Hi, everybody. Welcome to CMN 153. My name is Lillian Ruiz, and I'm the instructor for the class. I'm sorry that we aren't meeting in person the way we normally would, but as we all know, these are unusual times, and I'm grateful for the fact that we can at least interact with one another in this mode. And I thought what I would do today is tell you a little bit about the syllabus and the course outline, the way the class is going to be structured, as well as a little bit about myself. And then we can begin with the actual course itself. Next class. And you can see that at the top of our Moodle site, there's several sections there that probably will be of interest to you. The first happens to be entitled Syllabus and Other Course Documents. This is where I have copies of our syllabus and our course outline, and we'll be adding copies of any handouts that I would have been distributing over the course of the semester. You can also see as well that I've got a place for us to have our optional chats and Zoom sessions, which I will be talking about shortly, as well as a place for past class sessions. And what I will be doing is every week I will be uploading that week onto the past class discussion section so that you have available and visible to you in the Moodle section just 1 week's worth of classes. So that said, you can always refer back to previous classes, but the current week will always be available to you, and then you can go to past class sessions for the previous classes. And you can see that on our syllabus, if you're looking at the syllabus, my name is there, Lillian Ruiz. Most people just call me Lillian. I'm pretty informal, but feel free to call me what you feel comfortable with. My email is there as well, ruiz@gcc.mass.edu. No first initial in my email, which goes to show how long I've been at GCC. It's hard to believe, but I've been there since 1993. And when I began at GCC, we were just beginning with email and with the internet. So we were all given addresses based on our surname at that point, rather than utilizing the first initial as well. We didn't have a whole lot of foresight, I don't think, which goes to show just how new the internet really was. And the internet being one of the class topics that we will be discussing in terms of media and popular culture. You can see my phone is also there. Obviously, I'm not in my office, but you can always leave a voicemail, and I will be checking my voicemail, and I can return that call to you. And as I indicated, I wanted you to have some optional times where you could interact with me. On Tuesdays, it'll be an optional chat room, and the link is there at the top side of our Moodle. And that would be Tuesday from 12:30 to 1, where I will just be there every Tuesday. You're welcome to chat with me about questions or anything in relation to the class. And if we've got several people on chat, we can actually have a kind of class discussion. On Thursdays, I'll also be available from 12:30 to 1, and that's our optional Zoom class time. Again, you're not required to go to either one of them, but you can log on to Zoom, and you can see that there is a place for that on our website. And again, you can ask questions or make comments, and if there are a group of us, we can have a kind of class discussion. And for office hours, you can make an appointment either via Zoom or chat room or even telephone. I want to try to be as flexible and as available as possible. The textbook for this class is a Media and Popular Culture textbook. The 11th edition is the edition I believe that the bookstore has. Basically, you can use whichever edition you'd like. The earlier editions are probably less expensive, and you might be able to find them online. Basically, the text, Mass Communication in a Digital Age, gives a good overview of media and popular culture, and we'll be defining both of these terms historically. And then, of course, as you know, since media is constantly changing so quickly in the age of the internet, that we will be basically using our own experiences to talk about the current and the contemporary when it comes to media and its influence on popular culture. And there also is a note here that it's assumed you'll have a good dictionary thesaurus for reference. Now, I have this in all of my classes because I happen to teach English classes as well as teach public speaking classes. And in fact, if you are interested in taking another summer session class, during summer session 2, I am also teaching a public speaking class. So if you are interested in that, you can just contact me and I can give you additional information. But basically, all of these classes and all classes at GCC basically require communication, which means that having a good dictionary that gives you something like definitions as well as spellings and parts of speech, as well as a thesaurus, which gives you synonyms, words with similar meanings, can be very useful. And I'm quite aware that probably all of you have access to that electronically, but having access to it and actually using it are two very separate things. So I hope that you get into the habit of using that. In course description, you can see what this class is. That this is basically CMN 153, a general overview of the history and influence of mass media on popular culture. And again, part of how we'll begin is by defining things like media, mass media, culture, and popular culture. The course examines advertising, books, newspapers, magazines, radio, film, television, gaming, music, and the internet, with a focus on developing visual literacy, since so many of the messages that are communicated are through visual means or pictures, visual literacy, and critical thinking skills. And that's probably something that you've heard a lot of in college, this idea of critical thinking. Again, I have it on all of my syllabi, whether it be an English class or a public speaking class or a media class. And basically, when I think of critical thinking, I think of asking questions, something that toddlers do very well, especially asking the question why. And when that toddler gets older, they stop asking their why questions. I'm somewhat suspicious that one of the reasons why is actually because of our educational system. Sad but true. But that toddler who was filled with curiosity at age 3 about why the grass is green is now 13 and really no longer is curious or interested when a teacher is ready to talk about a concept like photosynthesis in a classroom. So I oftentimes say that critical thinking isn't something that we need to necessarily learn, but perhaps relearn, something that we did quite well in our youths. So you can see that there's a note here that you can only receive credit for CMN 153 or HUM 153, which was the previous coding for this class, so that was years ago. But it's the same course. And there is a prerequisite, English 101, 103, or 105, which is our introductory English class at GCC. The idea is that you already have some experience with putting together an argument and with analysis. So if you don't have that prerequisite of what we call English 101 at GCC, or something comparable at another institution, please let me know and we can talk about what your best options are. So student learning outcomes, what you should expect to achieve from this class and what will happen in this class. Number 1, we will identify and understand contemporary media techniques. Number 2, we'll read and critically examine the images in contemporary media. Number 3, we'll identify major themes and issues in contemporary media. You'll begin to see patterns. Number 4, we'll see the relationship between media and our society. That media is so embedded in our society and our culture, there really is no way for any of us to be living in our society and culture and not be influenced by media. And number 5, to improve oral and written communication skills, which is something I put on all of my syllabi, regardless of the course or the discipline. CMN 153 offers a general introduction to the content and techniques of contemporary media by examining representative mass media. Obviously, we can't study everything, but I'll have some representative mass media, and you'll have the opportunity to choose some media of your own to examine. The course emphasizes critical thinking, critical analysis, and critical writing. And then I'm on the second page of the syllabus under procedures. Basically, if we were meeting in person, we would be meeting on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So basically what I will be doing is trying to duplicate that by posting a video of myself of what I would normally be discussing in class on Tuesdays and Thursdays by 1 p.m. And I might post the video earlier, but definitely it'll be available on Tuesdays and Thursdays by 1 p.m. And then you have a 24-hour deadline to watch that particular class video and to answer the corresponding attendance question for that video in our discussion forum. And you can see that at the top of our Moodle site, there's a section for discussion forum. If you can't make that 24-hour deadline, you can always ask me for an extension if you need more time. But I'm hopeful that most of you will be able to do it within 24 hours. Your answer on that discussion forum is basically your attendance for that particular class. Now, you're not required to respond to any of your classmates' responses, though I will be responding to everybody's response. So any additional interaction you have with your classmates on the discussion forum, I consider participation, similar to the way that you would participate, let's say, in a live class. And I know that some students learn best by participating and being very vocal. Others learn best by listening and being reflective, and I think both are excellent ways to learn. So you can decide how much or how little to participate. You should, however, read all of the discussion forum responses from your classmates and my responses to those responses. This will give you an idea of what it is that we would have been talking about in class if we had been meeting live. And as I indicated, I'll hold optional class chat sessions every Tuesday from 12:30 to 1, and every Thursday will be optional Zoom class sessions from 12:30 to 1. No penalty for not attending these sessions. Think of them as another opportunity for participation. And any written assignments that you have, which I will be talking about in greater depth in a few minutes, whether they be journals or final project or even a final exam, you will send to my email, because my grading program works better with my email, which is, again, my surname, Ruiz, R-U-I-Z, at gcc.mass.edu via PDF, and I will return the assignments to your email with my feedback. And basically, under the course requirements, you're expected to complete all the reading and writing assignments by the due date. Though if you need additional time, please ask me. I'll be happy to grant you an extension. Students will also submit periodic journal entries discussing their reactions to the various media. And I have more information about that under the journal section, which is the next section. There also is a final exam that will be given. The final exam is a cumulative exam. It's an essay exam, and it's open book, open notes. And basically what I will be doing is giving you 24 hours to answer a couple of essay questions out of a list of essay questions. And it's a way for you to synthesize all of the elements that we've been talking about in class. So again, it's open book, open notes, so it's nothing that you have to memorize. It's just a way of understanding how concepts fit together, the concepts that we'll be talking about over the course of this semester. So those journals that I was talking about, response journals, let me read you what I have listed in the syllabus and then discuss a bit. That the journals are meant as an opportunity for the students in the class to analyze media. Guidelines will be very informal, and students should use the journals as an opportunity to explore the media in the way he or she feels would be most beneficial. I'll give some suggestions in class, but on the whole, the journals should reflect any relevant thoughts, questions, etc. the individual student has about a particular form of media. And journals will be collected on a regular basis and graded, but graded informally. I'm not going to be reading for grammar or mechanics. Basically, I'm reading just for content. It's as if we were having a conversation on paper. And I will grade them on a checkmark system, where an excellent is a plus, good is a check plus, satisfactory is a check. There also is a less than satisfactory and unsatisfactory, but most of the grades end up in the excellent, good, or satisfactory range. Late journals will lower your grade by 1 full grade. No late journal will be accepted after 1 week has elapsed unless you've made other arrangements with me beforehand. In other words, ask for an extension. So basically, whenever we're talking about a particular form of media, the class after that, you'll have a journal due. Most students end up writing about a page or so, but as long or as short as you'd like it to be. You can incorporate what I've talked about in class video, what you've read about in our class readings, and your own experiences, as well as anything discussed in the class discussion forum. But it's a way for you to give some feedback on each of the media. And again, I will evaluate it and get that back to you. So by the ending of the semester, you should have a good number of responses to all of the media that we will be studying over the course of the semester. Things you could utilize, let's say, for the final exam and the questions on the final exam. Now, there also is going to be a final project. And what I'm asking you to do for the final project is for you to decide something about media that you want to discuss in depth over the course of the semester. And it could be something that we've discussed that you want to expand on. It could be something that we didn't have a chance to discuss that you want to discuss. Finding something of interest to you. And over the course of the semester, I'll give you ideas and ways that you could proceed with that. And basically what you've got is a way to examine that particular element in media in greater depth, more so than you would do in, let's say, a journal. And for the course project, most of you, I suspect, will end up writing a pretty typical academic paper. And this is where grammar and mechanics is as important as the actual content. But you can also use the actual media itself to analyze media. So you could do something like a short documentary, for instance, analyzing media. So you have a lot of options available to you. Again, we'll talk about these as the semester progresses. So when you put all of these together, the journals that you would have been responding to over the course of the semester, your more in-depth analysis in your final project, you can put all of that together for answering your final exam questions. You can use all of that information and more. Now, if you are a returning student to GCC, you probably have seen our institutional services disability statement, but I just wanted to read that to you. That Greenfield Community College values inclusion and equal access to its programs and activities and is committed to fostering an environment of respect and full participation. Our goal is to create learning environments that are equitable, inclusive, and welcoming. So if there are aspects of the instruction or design of this course that results in barriers to your inclusion or any kind of accurate assessment or achievement, please notify me as soon as possible. And if you are a student with a disability and you think you might need some sort of reasonable accommodation, please contact the Office of Disability Services as soon as possible to discuss your needs and options. And you can see that there's a web address there as well as a telephone number for contact. There also is the GCC Wellness Center, that these are challenging times, so if you're struggling for any reason, you might want to contact the Learning Support GCC Wellness Center, and there's contact information for that as well. Attendance. Class activity and discussion is extremely important and cannot be made up, so absences and tardiness will be negatively reflected in your participation grade. And while each case is different, anything more than one absence could lower your grade. So you can see that basically there is a participation grade that I will be talking about shortly. Excessive absences could even result in failure. You don't need to notify me that you're going to be absent for a particular class. Again, your response for the class attendance question will be your attendance, so to speak. But do speak with me if you're going to miss several. And consultations, you can always consult with me by appointment or, of course, always during our optional chat and Zoom times. That final course project, which I was talking about earlier, is an analysis of a particular form or technique of media, and I will be distributing guidelines and discussing them over the next several classes. It's due on or before the last day of class, so you have the entire semester to think about it and to put it together. But obviously, the sooner you start and the sooner you submit, the better off everybody is. I encourage early submissions. If you are submitting in text, and I suspect most of you are, it should be typed, double-spaced, 1-inch borders. Pages should be numbered. Cover pages should include a title, your name, the course and section number, my name, and the due date. Now, if you can hand in your final project early enough, and I can't necessarily give you a specific date, it's just going to depend on what things look like in terms of my schedule. But if you can get in your course project early, before the ending of the semester, and I can return it back to you, you have the option of revising that course project for a higher grade. Basically, I just ask that you hand in the original with my comments along with your revision, and then you end up getting the higher of the two grades. So that perhaps is some incentive for you to do your course project earlier rather than later, but you've got up until the ending of the semester. I'm going to skip the plagiarism section. We can talk about that next class. And instead, I'll talk about the grading section, which was probably the piece that you were most interested in. And these are approximate percentages. So 10% is what I'm calling participation. That includes things like answering our discussion forum questions, watching class videos, any in-class assignments and activities, and so forth. 30% are all of those journals, and over the course of the semester, you are going to be doing a total of, and I'll talk about this in a little bit as well, 10 journals. So all 10 journals together are 30% of your grade. Your final course project, where you're doing an in-depth examination of something associated with media, that's 30%. And then your final exam, which is open book, open notes essay, is 30%. And that's for 100%. For an A, excellent, or B, good, or C, satisfactory. And I like to focus on those first 3-letter grades on the first day of class in particular, and I suggest that you do as well. So now I'm going to move to our course outline in the course syllabus and other documents section. And this basically is an overview of what we are going to be doing during the semester and when. With a couple of disclaimers that you can see that dates and assignments may be subject to change, and reading should be done prior to the date indicated, because on that date, that's when the class video will be addressing that particular reading. So today, the 15th of July, Thursday, is purely just introduction. I knew I would have time to introduce myself, talk a little bit about the class and the requirements. So we're beginning with the actual class next week, starting with Tuesday the 20th, if at all possible, if you can have chapter 1 read, which is about mass communication, and chapter 15 read, which is about media effects and research. So this talks about how media, which is meant to be consumed for entertainment and meant to be created for profit, can be examined from an academic perspective, which is what we are going to be doing. Now, if you can't have the reading read by that particular point, don't panic. You'll notice your first journal isn't going to be due for a while. And think of these first readings as kind of background introductory reading to help prepare you for the actual analysis of the media that we'll be doing over the course of the semester. So I'm well aware that people are adding and dropping classes and getting textbooks and so forth. And then on Thursday, the 22nd, is when I'm going to be talking about advertising, chapter 11. One of the reasons why I wanted to talk about advertising, and also public relations, which is very similar to advertising, but there are some differences that we will discuss. That's in chapter 12, is because basically all media share the advertising and public relations element. And that is basically the glue that holds media and popular culture together. So I thought that would be a good way to begin. And you can see that starting week 3, July 27th, is when you will have your first journal due. So we'll be talking a little bit more about the journals. That will be based on advertising and public relations, where basically I'm going to ask you to write about a page or so, but as long or as short as you'd like it to be, with your own reflections and thoughts about advertising and public relations. So certainly you can reflect on what we've discussed in class, classroom readings, classroom discussions, and our discussion forum and anything else. And then on the 29th, you can see that our second journal is going to be due, and that second journal will be based on what we talk about on the 27th, that Tuesday. And on the 27th, on Tuesday, is when we were discussing the internet, chapter 2. And basically, I wanted to put the internet first, even though it isn't necessarily chronological, because all media has basically needed to adapt itself because of the internet. So again, the internet is something that, much like advertising and public relations, is important for all of the media that we are going to be addressing. When we go to the 29th, we will talk about chapter 10, books, one of the oldest forms of media. And then when we go to the 3rd of August is when we will be talking about newspapers and also journalism. Not to say that journalism is purely restricted to newspapers, but usually when we talk about the early days of journalism, we talk about newspapers. So that would be chapter 8 for newspapers, chapter 14 for journalism. And you can see that on that date, the 3rd of August, is when you would have your third journal due on books. So basically, starting week week 3, just about every class you're going to have a journal due, so we'll be basically exchanging journals. And of course, if you need additional time, you can always ask me. And then on the 5th of August, Thursday, we will be talking about chapter 9, which is about magazines. Again, the chapters might be slightly different if you're using a different edition, but you can find the section on magazines fairly easily. And this is when you hand in your journal 4 on newspapers and journalism. This gets us to week 5, which gets us to the 10th of August, where we will be talking about radio, which appears in chapter 5. And this is when you will be handing in your journal about magazines. And then on the 12th is when we will be talking about movies, and that is in chapter 7. And you can see that that's when you're handing in your journal about radio. And then on August 17th, on Tuesday, that's when we will talk about television and cable. That's in chapter 6, and that's when you will hand in your journal on movies. And then the 19th is when we're talking about music, chapter 4. Now, this is a little bit tricky, music, because you might say that if we were going from a chronological basis, music has existed since the beginning of time, probably, so even before books. But music has had such adaptations done to it because of both radio and also because of television and cable. This seemed like a good point to put in music, chapter 4. And on the 19th, when we're talking about music, this is when you are writing on or submitting in your journal on what you've written on television and cable. That's your journal 8. And then we finish up the semester in our 7th week when on the 24th, Tuesday, we talk about digital gaming. And this is when your journal 9 on music is due. And then on the 26th is when we have our final exam and our course project deadline. So your course project would be due by that date. And also this is when you would hand in your journal on digital gaming, which I will get back to you as soon as I can. The final, you have 24 hours to complete, so you've got up until the Friday. And my hope is to be able to give you your digital gaming or return your digital gaming journal to you before you hand in your final exam, so that you can utilize that information if you so wanted to on your final exam. And of course, you can always hand in any of these assignments early. And then I've got some criteria for essay examination. We'll talk a little bit about this further as the semester progresses. So that gives you an overview of the class as a whole in media and popular culture. And we will continue on next week talking about some of the specifics with media and popular culture. But I thought for today's attendance question, after watching this video, my question to you is to ask you to introduce yourself to your classmates in our class discussion forum. And you can be as short or as lengthy as you like in your response. Feel free to upload pictures or to upload video, but you're not required to. But hopefully this will duplicate a little bit of what we would have done in class when we would have gotten to get to know each other a little bit further. And then, as I indicated, we can begin by laying some foundation next week about what mass media is and what popular culture is and how we study that from an academic perspective. So I hope you're doing well. I'm doing well, and we will continue on next class discussing media and popular culture. Take care. Bye-bye.